Let me see. I can't really see that.
It's just starting down here.
Yeah, so you gotta wait a sec. Tell me, you give me a thumbs up when it says go. Okay! We live?
We're live.
We're live.
We're here.
Welcome to Real Guitar Success Live. We have a great training for you today, and I'm hoping that you'll get your guitar out and play along. But I'm going to explain to you today a way to use a very popular video online from Axis of Awesomeness to practice one of the most common chord progressions of all time, certainly at this time in popular music, the 1, 5, 6, 4, and I'll explain a little more about what that means. In any case, welcome. This is Ami Fields, the co-host. I'm Tomas Michaud. Let me just start out explaining a little bit how this goes for anybody who's new. We're going to basically present this training, and I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. Then we're going to answer all your questions. So we have some pre-submitted questions, but if you have questions that come up along the way or you just think of them, go ahead and submit them. And Ami will be checking the questions and we'll be answering them. If it's appropriate right when we're doing the training, I'll ask her to chime on in, but otherwise we'll wait till after the training and answer questions. Then, for those of you who are members of Real Guitar Success and have completed the monthly practice plan, you're in a drawing and we're going to give away a free $50 Amazon gift card to one lucky winner. Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
Okay. 1, 5, 6, 4. What does that mean anyway?
Well, a lot. Means you need to understand theory.
Not too much. In this case, it's a way of numbering a chord progression just to make it so that you can communicate with other people. Now, I'll give you a quick rundown where the numbers come from. Let's say we take a scale, C, D, E, F, G, the C scale. Each note, we give it a number.
Right.
So C would be number 1, D would be number 2. Now, on each of those notes, we make a chord. I won't go into how we do that, but we just add some notes and make a chord. When you do that and you take notes right out of the scale, the 1 chord will be C, 2 chord will be D minor. Because you're taking notes right out of the scale, that 2 chord will always end up being minor, and 3 would be E minor, 4 would be F, 5 would be G, and so on. So the numbers are indicating the chords as they fall in the scale. So if you have the key of C, that would be a C chord for number 1. Let's see, I said 1, 5, 6, 4. So the C chord would be 1, the 5 chord would be G, C, D, E, F, G, 6 chord would be A minor, and then the 4 chord, F, C, D, E, F. So I don't know if you've heard that. 5, 6, and 4. Now that progression, not necessarily in that key, but that progression is one of the most popular.
Yeah.
And one of the advantages of making it numbers is that you can just start on a different note and change keys and then have all the other notes follow. In other words, with the exact same distance. So if I moved everything up 1 step to D, now all the other chords would move up 1 step. So instead of C, it'd be D. The 5 chord would be A. Instead of G and C, and then we've got the 6 chord B minor, and then the 4 chord G.
I did also just want to mention it's important to know that if you're going to change keys, that the scale may be a little bit different too. So for C we have what's called all natural notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, blah, blah, blah. But if we go to the key of D, you're going to have 1 sharp note. It doesn't apply now, but if you get into different keys, it will. So I just want to make that mental note out there. If someone's trying to change something into the key of B flat, it'll be a little different.
I probably wouldn't worry too much about that at this point. That's a little more advanced theory, but I'll show you a pattern on the guitar that you could use basically to account for that. So 1, 5, 6, 4, or in this case, we're going to do it in the key of D. 1, 5, A, B minor, and G. Now, even if you don't know all these open chords, or in this case, this is a bar chord that I'm using, there's another way to do this. We can use power chords for this progression. And because this is one of the most popular progressions, you can apply this to many, many, many songs. As a matter of fact, somebody on YouTube called Awesomeness has done just that. They've made this whole video showing you a bunch of songs using this progression.
Yeah.
And we're going to use that today. I'm going to show you how you can play along with the video. They're in the key of D. So for power chords, we're going to make this first power chord, we'll call it a D power chord. By the way, power chords don't have major or minor, so just drop that out. Power chords are missing the note that says it's either a major or minor, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So for the D, we're going to put the first finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string and the third finger on the 7th fret of the 4th string. It looks like that. And don't worry too much if you accidentally hit the 6th string. I'm touching it with my first finger so it doesn't sound not important. So that's a power chord. If you got your guitar, try it out. And then for the next chord, we're going to make an A power chord. We're going to move that whole thing over one string. So now I'm starting on the 6th string, 5th fret, and the 7th fret of the 5th string. So we've got the first one starting on the 5th string to the 6th string. Then we're going to move that form, everything the same but up 2 frets. That's now the 7th fret, and that's the 9th fret with my 3rd finger. And then for the final chord, that's the B, by the way, we're going down to G here, and that's the 3rd fret. 3rd fret, 1st finger, 5th fret, 3rd finger. So the whole thing, try it with me if you got your guitar. The D to the A to the B, up 2 frets, and then down 2 and 2, down 4 frets to the 3rd fret, G. Again, D, A over, up 2 frets to B, and down to G. Kind of sounds familiar, huh? Now, I want to show you one more thing. For those of you who are working on bar chords or are planning on working on it soon, this ties into my new course, Bar Chords for Everyone. I start off using a form of a bar chord and then add on it little by little. It allows me to both get you to strengthen your hands as well as to learn to move around. So for that bar chord, I'm making that bar chord like that, but I'm adding the pinky because that's one step closer to making a full bar chord. So this is a power chord with a pinky, a 3-note power chord we'll call it, as opposed to a 2-note. Now for this exercise, either one will work just fine. But if you are planning on or are working on bar chords, I encourage you to add that pinky. So the pinky's right next to the 3rd finger on the next string, in this case, the 3rd string. This is the 5th string, 4th string, and 3rd string. And when I move over, the exact form moves over. So everything moves over one string. Now I'm on the 6th, 5th, and 4th. Then up 2 frets, move the whole thing up 2 frets, and then down to the 3rd fret. Sounds almost the same, huh?
Just to be clear, are you strumming all the strings or just some of them?
I'm just strumming, I'm aiming at the top 3 strings.
Okay.
But again, I don't worry about hitting the 6th string because I've got my first finger muting it slightly, and even if I hit it, it's not a big thing. It doesn't really sound like part of the chord.
Yeah, got it.
And when I hit the 6th string, I don't try and strum the whole guitar, but if I do, this finger right here is actually touching the higher string so it doesn't sound anyway.
Ah, I see.
But the way I'm hitting it, I'm moving out so it's not actually strumming all the way down to the high string.
Right.
So again, 1, 5, 6, 4. We give it letter names in the key of D. D, A, B, and G. Now, for those of you who want to play the open chords, this can work too, and you can try both. That would be a D chord. This is the D open chord. I'm on the 2nd fret there with my 3rd finger in between on the 3rd fret 2nd string. To a B minor. Now, I'm going to recommend if you're new and not playing bar chords yet, you make your B minor like this. It's a 3-string B minor. It's not terribly full, but it works. So that's the 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the 1st string, the 2nd finger on the 3rd string, 3rd fret, and the 3rd finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. Now, if you already know bar chords or you want to work on it, it would look like this, a B minor bar chord. Like an A minor, but up 2 frets with the bar. And for the A, I'm using this form of A, but any way you want to finger it is going to be fine. And the G, again, any way you want to finger it. I could easily go between these two and they both work perfect. So D, B minor. No, I'm sorry. D to A. Let's go in order. to B minor, and then to the G. So those of you who want to do the open chords, do this with me. D, go to whatever B minor works for you. I'll do the bar this time. Oh, I'm sorry, I did it again. D to A. Now the B minor. And to the G. And power chord, D, A, B, and G. Okay, we're ready.
Yeah.
We're going to play along with Axiom of Awesomeness. Now, there's a video. You can easily find it on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. But they have several videos. And what they've done is these three guys are singing song after song after song, just a part of a song that uses this progression. So you can see how many songs use this progression. We're going to play along with it. Use the video if you want to do this at home with the white background. They have several videos. The one with the white background is what I'm showing you today. Some of the other videos are in a different key, and you can play along with those too. For instance, I know at least one's in the key of E, so you move everything up to E. Instead of D, you go up 2 frets to E, and then you move over, and then up. And you know, I don't even need to know there we go. I don't need to know the names of the chords. I'm looking at a pattern with power chords. And then over, up 2 frets, and down 4 frets. I can just look at that pattern and not even know the names, and it works. That's the same thing with bar chords, by the way. That's one of the things that makes bar chords so powerful.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to the key of D. And one more thing I want to mention. On this video, we're going to do one measure on each chord. At about 2:15, he changes up and basically double time. So it's 2 beats, or half a measure gets a chord. So it'll be twice as fast. There's a little pause before that, and I'll show you where that is. So let's start out.
I did put the link in the chat, by the way, to this video.
Oh, good.
Yep.
So I'm going to start the video out and show you how to do this. D, A, to B, up 2 frets down, 4 frets. And if you want to strum a little, 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can strum. Maybe we'll try open chords. A, D minor, G. There's that little B minor. A, D minor, G. Back to power chords. Oh, I showed the open chords there. Country road. Okay, so now I'll show you at 2:15 what it does. We're going to move up a little bit here. Oh, this was easier with my...
There you are.
Okay, so it's going to do a little pause, and I'll show you. Oh, there was no pause. So let's try that again. Let's get the pause in there. Okay. It's coming. Here's the pause. There it is, right there. So now it's double time. I think they sped up too. D minor. Okay, you got the idea. So that's a lot of fun. You can practice your open chords with that. But the advantage of practicing in a common chord progression is once you practice it, the movements from those chords get easier and easier.
Yeah.
Then when you come to a song that uses that, which there are a lot, you've already practiced not just the chords, but the actual movement from chord to chord.
Yeah.
And you're going to train your ear at the same time, which is a more subtle process.
Right.
But you'll start hearing that progression in songs without having to have somebody show you the sheet music or something.
Yeah.
You just hear that movement. I can hear that, the bass note movement. I hear the bass note movement in the song, and I know it's using that chord progression.
Right. Right.
So how was that? Did that sound like something fun to do? Play along with Axis of Awesomeness.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
So cool.
Well, if you guys have questions and anything regarding this, please throw them in the chat now. Did you have anything else, or are you ready to go to some questions?
I'm ready to go to some questions.
All right. So while we're waiting for y'all live folks to submit some stuff, we have folks who've submitted things ahead of time. So our first one is a two-part question. We'll do part one. This is from Shulamit. Shulamit says, when I started learning to play guitar, I started out on a nylon string, playing solely with my fingers. After some time, I bought a steel string acoustic guitar and tried playing it with a standard pick, but found it clumsy, and if I wanted to do some finger-style playing as part of a song, it wasn't terribly successful using the pick or hybrid playing. Someone suggested I try thumb pick, which I did. I've been using it ever since. It solves several problems in that it doesn't fall from your hand, frees your fingers to do finger-style playing. What I can't understand is why most guitarists prefer a standard pick. Why isn't a thumb pick recommended as a standard way to play guitar?
Okay. So I've had some conversation with Shulamit around this also, and she recommended a certain type of pick. It's called a Herco, which kind of looks like a regular flat pick with the backing of a thumb. So I understand more where she's coming from, because a standard thumb pick is very stiff.
Right.
And you can't really, it's really difficult for me anyway to get a smooth strum. I've never seen anybody who has a good smooth, pop strum on acoustic guitar using a thumb pick to do that.
Yeah.
It's just too thick, and you need both the bending of the pick a little bit, as well as to hold it in such a way the pick wobbles a little bit. So when I'm strumming like this, I couldn't do that with a thumb pick because it wouldn't allow me to both wobble and get it in just the right place.
Got it.
Of course, it works great for finger picking. The thumb pick, by the way, it allows you to get louder bass notes. When you hit the bass note with a thumb pick, it's louder than using just your regular thumb.
Got it.
I like that on a steel string guitar. On a nylon, I don't. Because, see, I'm using on a nylon string my nail and my flesh, and I can get different tone and volume by how I point the finger and where I hit it.
Sure.
The thumb pick eliminates that. It just evens
It's just
everything.
even kilter.
everything
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Now, I tried those Hercos, and I found that I could see how the pick part was easier to get a strum, but the Hercos didn't work for me, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The part that goes around my thumb was too loose, and when it came to finger picking, it really didn't give me the substance or hold it tight enough.
Got it.
And the pick itself, because it wasn't so stiff, it didn't allow me to finger pick as quickly or smoothly.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
maybe just practice on my part, but for my playing, I'm going to stick to a flat pick for anything that's strumming. Not to mention, when I want to play a melody, I want to choke up on the pick and get a little tighter, which I couldn't do with the thumb pick.
Yeah.
And I'll use a regular stiff thumb pick for finger picking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be cool if Herco made a version of that with a stiffer backing so it stayed in place better.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe it's working for enough people. They don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, maybe so. The second part to Shulamit's question is, in one of your lessons you taught major seventh chords. I've been practicing but haven't quite figured out how and when to incorporate them into a song.
Okay, major chords, she's talking about major seventh chords.
Major seventh, yep.
So that would be, let's say a D chord, and a major seventh.
Yeah.
So one of the things I would do is practice a progression that's common, that uses a major seventh. And I'll include a link in the video, to a video that has such a progression.
Yeah.
I'll find it and dig it out and put it in the description or in the blog post, probably most likely. Major sevenths aren't as common in pop and rock music,
Right.
but they're used quite a bit, and they're not that hard to play in an open position, unlike some other chords. So for a G major 7, I'd play like this, A major 7. All I could say is maybe I'll see if I can find some songs that use them as well, but when you hear a common progression that uses a major 7, I think it might inspire your imagination a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not the composer type, but major 7 chords are just beautifully sweet to me.
Yeah, I
Love
like
major
them. I went from major to major 7th, and you could hear the subtle difference between the chords.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites on the uke, the F major 7. It's just got a
It's
pretty
an open,
voicing.
it's kind of warm sound.
Yeah, it's got a pretty voicing. Cool. Okay, so Paul says, I like the session with raising or lowering pitch, but I'm trying to sing more and some songs are a little high. Do you recommend tuning down the strings other than using a capo or changing chords? Example, tune the low E to say a D and tuning the rest of the strings to follow suit.
That's quite a question. I've never really thought about that. And I did actually a little research because it got me interested when I saw the question. A fair number of rock guitar players actually tune down 1/2 step.
Oh, interesting.
So they make this low E, E flat, and everything according to it. And I'm told by people who do that, it gets them just a little easier to bending the notes on the guitar because it makes them a little bit looser.
Yeah.
By the way, if you were to lower the pitch like he's suggesting down, it would make the guitar strings looser. And at some point they would get so loose it would sound not musical. It would bang against the frets and even lose its tone. I'd say a fret, I've never heard anybody tuning down lower than 1 step. But I think if you tune down 1 step, it could help. It basically would create, if a song is just a little teeny bit too high, it would lower the whole thing 1 step without having to refinger it to different chords, basically, or put a capo on. Or do that whole capo thing. I have a whole system on how to use a capo to basically lower. You put the capo on, but then you change the chords to go down, and the capo just allows you to adjust the exact right place. A couple of problems. If you tune down, when you go to play along with somebody else or with videos, it's not going to be in tune.
Exactly.
And also, if you're playing around with some songs on YouTube and you're playing the right chords, but it doesn't sound right, that could be it. They may have tuned down 1/2 step. I've never encountered one a whole step down, but there are videos, I can't remember which ones, but they tune down 1/2 step. I would say experiment. You don't have a lot to lose. Try tuning it down 1 step and see. The other thing I would say is it doesn't really solve the whole problem.
Sure.
Because you're just talking about 1 step, and if a song is still high, where do you go from there? You can't keep tuning down.
Right.
You still need to learn a system of how to adjust keys of a song, which is a whole nother issue. So I don't think it takes the place of that, but if you have a bunch of songs that are just a little teeny bit too high, that might be a good solution for some people. I don't see why you couldn't try it and see what happens.
Yeah.
You can tune back up.
That's true. I'm also on side, fight the fire on both ends. So what about some vocal work? What about learning a bit?
Stretch the vocal.
Stretching, yeah. Because I don't know your voice, and I think it's different for men too, just because ranges tend to be more limited.
I didn't know that.
Well, I think if you're not like a professional singer, you haven't worked on expanding your range. Anyone's range is going to be limited, right? So look into some possible vocal coaching, because I have found that can be really helpful. It may be so much as like it feels high, but maybe you're not breathing properly. Maybe you're not using the right part of your voice in order to get to those notes, which you could eradicate the problem by that if you did some vocal work and found out that you were like, oh, well, if I breathe this certain way, I actually can make this work. Or I don't need to go a whole step down. I could go a 1/2 step and make this work. So that's something to think about as well.
I would say from my experience, about a couple of years ago, I took 6 months of vocal coaching, and it really made singing a lot more fun for me.
Yeah.
It didn't turn me from a bad singer to a great singer.
Sure.
It turned me from a bad singer to a little bit better singer, but made a lot more fun with me singing. I feel much more in control. I think it did not just extend my range a little bit, but it helped me to hit notes without straining, so it made it easier and more fun by making it easier.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad I did. And I'd like to make time maybe to get a few more, but I think even a small amount can make a big difference.
Definitely. And also just a side note, you got to remember this is part of your body too. So if you're singing and you're playing and you feel like you're straining and you're like, your neck is tight and your vessels are popping out, like definitely tone back a little bit and see if you can seek some help. or change the key.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. We have John who says, can you explain the caged system and how using it can assist our playing?
Okay, I'll do a short version of this, and then I'll put a link to a live that we did last month, which was all about the cage system. So basically the cage system says there are 5 chord shapes, and these chord shapes can be played anywhere. You have to distinguish to make this work between shapes and the actual chord. Okay. So this is a C chord shape, and it's a C chord. But if I move it up here, it's still a C chord shape, but it's not a C chord anymore. Then I have to put a bar. Now it's a D chord. I moved it up 2 frets. So you can play a D chord, an E flat chord, with a C chord shape. So the shapes are C, G, D, A, and E. Okay. And what I was doing was going up, counting 5 each. Right. C up 5, C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, D, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, F, G. Oh, A, B, C, D, F, E.
Yeah,
that was 5.
Got it.
So those are, and they also correspond with the 5 most popular keys on guitar as well. So the cage system for most people is about doing chord forms so you can play chords all up and down the neck. There's also a whole system of using it for scales and soloing, which honestly I'm not proficient at that, so I won't pretend to talk to it. I've read opinions on that, and some people love it and some people hate it, like with anything. So basically it's just a way of looking at the guitar to make sense out of it. It's nothing terribly new, or I don't think it's some great secret that if you knew it, all of a sudden makes your guitar playing great. But for some people, it works.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. And yeah, we did do that one last month.
Yeah, cool. That was last month. So I will, remind me, put a link in there so you can see more on that. I go into more detail.
Yeah, good. We have Thomas, another Thomas, not you, in a minor chord format or any chord format that has flattened notes, i.e. 1, B3, 5, where the B3 note is either C or F. Once I get this clear, so actually this is more of a theory question. It's a little bit deeper than I thought. I read it, but it's a little deeper than
So ask the first part of the question.
In a minor chord format, or any chord format that has flattened notes, i.e. 1, flat 3, 5, where the flat 3 note is either C or F, it might sound a silly question, but does the flattening of the third note make this a B and E respectively? Obviously the same would apply to flat 5 notes. Okay, you don't have to read more.
I think what Thomas is asking is if you have a B in a chord and if you have a C in a chord,
right,
and you flatten it to make the minor chord in this case, it really wouldn't matter what you did it for, but if you flatten it, does it now turn into a B, or is it C flat?
That sounds like the question.
Yeah. So, yes and no.
Perfect.
First of all, let me just review for everybody so we're all on the same page. Every note, naturally, without sharps and flats, has one full step between them. So from C to D is one full step. So on the guitar, if I'm on a C note, one full step is 2 frets. If I take a D note and I go back a half step, make it D flat, it's the same note as if I went C up a step and called that C sharp. Now, you don't have to go from anywhere. You could call that either C sharp or D flat.
Right.
So that's called enharmonic. Notes, it'll look different on paper. You'll see a D on the staff with a flat, or you'll see a C note with a sharp. It sounds the same, but it looks different on paper, and it looks different. It looks the same on my guitar, but it looks different when I say it, or if I say C sharp or D flat, it basically sounds like I'm saying something different. It's the exact same note. And the main reason that comes into play, not as much with guitar, because of the keys we play in guitar, but if you're playing piano or orchestrating, composing, certain keys are going to make more sense to have sharps or flats. If you've got a key that's all sharps, you're probably not going to throw in a flat for no reason. You're going to use the sharp version of that note.
Yeah, yeah.
For the most part. And it makes it easier to read and looks in a way that makes more sense to people when they're looking at the staff. Now, that said, when you take a chord, let's say you take let's say a C chord, and you change, he's saying when you change that middle note, a C chord is a C, E, G. The middle note, and you flatten it, it makes it a C minor. It would sound like that. I can't do it well on the guitar. On the piano, you can just say, oh, go down one half step. But on the guitar, not so easy. The C minor would now have an E flat. And he's asking for a chord that has a C. If you go down a half step, would you call that a B? Well, there's two things about that. First of all, if I really was playing a song where a chord fell with a major chord that had a C in it, and I've turned it into a minor, I probably would call it C flat, because that means you'd be in a key that used a lot of flats to start with. But the second and more important things, that is mostly an intellectual pursuit, because we don't use those keys in guitar. And if you're a beginner, you're definitely not going to use those keys. So it's not going to come up. It's not likely to ever come up, but if it does come up, only when you get more advanced or playing in flat keys, basically, and sharp keys. And on top of that, whether you call the note one thing or another is not going to make a difference, because for guitar players, most of us just remember chord form.
The shape,
when we say a C minor, we're not taking a C and finding out where we can go down a half step. We're playing a C minor form or a C major form.
Yeah.
So this is a case where I wouldn't stress over too much. I hope I've opened up a little bit of that discussion of how to decide what to call a note. That could be helpful.
Sure.
But worried about whether the note is a B or a C in a minor chord is not going to come up. The same with the E and F. That's where the other half steps are.
Right, right.
E and F and B and C. In other words, when you go down from F to E, if you go F flat, it is the same as an E. Whereas most notes are going to have another note in between.
Yeah. In your experience, I mean, in my experience, I don't hear many people talking about C flat and F flat. That's just not something we really say.
Not in guitar.
Yeah. Because I don't even know. I mean,
there is the key of C flat. Very few people use it.
Yeah.
It is basically C with everything flat.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything flat.
Yeah, that's weird. That's not something that I would ever need to use.
Where I've seen it is in like some, I don't want to say avant-garde, but that's a possibility. That kind of modern music that they deliberately stretch the boundaries.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But for guitar music, any kind of popular guitar music, you'll never see that, ever.
Yeah. That's a fair question.
It doesn't make sense.
Sure. Okay, let's move on to Nancy's question. So Nancy says, I've been following your YouTube videos for some time now.
Good choice, Nancy.
I've been playing guitar for a year now, and I know a few chords, and I'm learning fingerstyle. I see so many songs that have just chords. My question is, how do I take those chords and finger pick them to make it sound like a song and not just picking chords?
Okay. I'll turn this over to Ami.
Oh.
You do that. I know she deals with this a lot with her students.
I do. It's a good question. So how do I answer this? I can say every teacher has the things that challenge them, and this is always one that's challenged me. So I've learned to work through it a little bit because it just kind of makes sense to me. So a lot of it has to do with rhythm study. That's step one. You got to understand rhythm, because if you're listening, let's say you're listening to a song on YouTube, right? And you look up the chords and you're like, okay, these chords match. It sounds right, but you're not just going to and know what song you're playing, right? So what you want to do is you want to see if you can figure out what the strumming rhythm is, and from there you can make more artistic decisions about what sort of finger style pattern that you want to do. Okay. And what's really helpful is if you learn a few like standard finger style patterns, which I know you have plenty of stuff. If you follow Tomas, you know you've got access to.
That's the first thing I would do, is get a repertoire, at least a handful of different patterns that are commonly used. Then you can kind of say, let me try this one. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And, this one, but maybe a little adjustment would sound better to me.
Exactly. And you can make those adjustments. If you study the patterns, practice the patterns with a couple of different chord progressions, that'll help your right hand just become a little more autonomous so that it gets used to doing the pattern that it's doing. I always tell my students when I'm teaching them, this took me forever. Because the minute that I start thinking about it, I get all tripped up. And that's just a basic arpeggiation, right? Just going up. It took me forever to get that. But once you got it, you got it. Then my recommendation is to start playing around with the forms of your song. So let's say that you're learning a pop song, right? You're going to have several sections that are the same. You're going to have a first verse, you're going to have a chorus, another verse, a chorus, sometimes a bridge, another chorus, a verse, and then you're done with the song, right? That's kind of the standard layout of a popular song. My recommendation for my students is to choose a finger style for all the verses, choose a different finger style for the choruses, and then strum or do something different for the bridge. And just start out that way. And what that's going to do is going to afford you an opportunity to practice more than one style and to practice giving some depth and dynamic to your playing. And that will help combat that boring, like, I'm just picking chords. I'm just going like... Now, when you get to the verse, you can... and do that for the whole whatever. And then when you go back to the chorus, you can... whatever it is. So that's a good place to start. Those would be my beginner tips. It's just get a solid 2 or 3 finger styles, apply them to like all verses are going to be this one, all choruses are going to be this one, and bridge I'm going to do this, and start there. And then the more you go along, the better you'll get. Keep listening to music too. See if you can, when you're listening to a song, see if you can clap out like the major hits of the strum. So if they're like see if you can just get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. See if you can find those major hits, and that's how you'll know what to accentuate when you're strumming or finger picking too.
So, in summary, and maybe I'll add a little to that, I would say, first of all, I wanted to spell a couple of things that I know not necessarily you, but other people have come up with in the past. There is no, for most songs, there is no one right finger picking pattern that's the right one.
Right.
For most songs, you kind of have to make some judgment calls of what would fit and use your own personal taste as well. Because for most songs, they're not doing one single finger picking pattern. So,
right.
So it's up to you, basically, to make something that works.
Yeah.
And even if it is a song that's a finger picking pattern, it's not likely the artist is doing the exact same thing constantly throughout the song. Once you get good at it, you kind of make subtle adjustments based on, you know, what you want to hear as a song in a song. So that's why I recommend starting with a number of patterns under your belt as a repertoire, and then just try to match and stretch them from there. Keep learning new patterns as you get more involved with both finger picking and better at guitar. Also, keep in mind that I don't think, what was I going to say? It's not a quick fix. There's no one secret. And again, I'm not saying you think this, but I have heard people say, just give me the secret. And there's not, it's a process you're developing. It's not this one trick and you'll be able to just play finger picking style with all songs. It's not that way. You're going to have to make choices, get better, learn some more things, try that out, and keep working it. It takes time, and that's part of the journey, actually.
Yeah.
It can either be a problem or it can be fun.
Yeah. And it's a style. Like, you develop your own style.
Yeah.
You develop
Eventually, that's what I would hope for you, is that you won't sound just like everybody else.
Exactly. And I know, and I can totally attest to this, I feel it mostly in dance so much as music, of like, you just want to get it right. I want it to sound right. I want it to look and sound the way that
I want somebody to tell me, that's right!
That's correct! Unfortunately, music is just not quite like that. Everyone's version's going to be a little bit different.
A lot of things are like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like the right answer and somebody just give it to me and I can do it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it doesn't always work that way. But keep guiding and making choices and getting better.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to insert a couple of live questions real quick while folks are here.
Live is cool.
This isn't really a question, but I just want to address this. Applejacks13 says, I have trouble switching chords, sad face, I gave up. And I said, don't give up! We're here to help. So
I say give up.
So what are your tips for Applejacks13?
Give up. Just call it quits. Why are you on this YouTube if you gave up?
Oh.
I say start from the beginning and go step by step and get some lessons.
Yeah. I agree.
Either online or in person.
And you know what? We actually, in several live sessions in the past, have talked a lot about switching chords. I would recommend looking through, because you have some really great content on that, and I know there's content all over the web for it. And my main thing about it is just remember when you're like, for me, learning music is one of those things where you do it wrong 50 times in a row, and then you go to bed, and then you wake up, and the next day you just got it. And I found that experience to be true for a lot of folks. So that's something to consider. And Felix isn't with us today, but we have another awesome musician named Eli in the house. He's our tech guy today. And I'm wondering, Eli, if you have any quick tips about changing chords, because you play guitar.
Yeah, in terms of changing chords...
Speaking to the mic real quick.
In terms of changing chords, I think a good tip is definitely keep on strumming, right? Because a lot of times people don't really notice that you're changing the chord. And you know that few couple seconds you need to switch your fingers. To the audience, you know, if you're keeping the rhythm and keeping everything consistent, they might not even notice, right? And obviously you're your harshest critic, so you'll notice yourself changing the chord more than they will.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
I think a lot of people think playing guitar is easier than it is. In some ways, they're right, but I see this over and over. People watch random YouTube videos, try some things out. It doesn't work as quickly as they'd like, and they want to quit.
Right.
And it's unrealistic, because it's unrealistic to think you can just watch some videos and completely out of order without taking into account if this is a good basic and this is the next step and the next step, and just do it and get it. I see this with students here at Starland all the time. They come in, they've tried on their own, they tell me what they've done. I'm thinking, man, almost nobody, unless they're incredibly gifted naturally, would actually be able to change smoothly and easily from what you're telling me you've done. But you've been led to believe that, these YouTube videos, this friend who show you a few things, you should be able to do it from what they told you. It's unrealistic. You need many people, not everybody, but you probably need step-by-step logical lessons, one after the other in the beginning, to get some sense of success and confidence. And I would recommend a good teacher, not just anybody. I've met a lot of people who play guitar and they don't know how to teach. They teach you random things, you know. We're unfortunately notorious for that, guitar players. Learning, because we learned, most of us learned in an informal setting, and then we don't know how to put that in some orderly fashion.
Yeah.
But I also recommend sign up for my Real Guitar Success and do the beginning adventure. It's step by step by step, and it's designed to give you confidence. And then practice. Don't do it once and say it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Do a little every day, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes. The momentum will catch up to you over time.
Yeah, I think those are all really good tips. And also, Apple Jackson, are you live? If you look in the live chat, a few other folks had some really great tips in there too. So just kind of browse through there. And for those of you that are watching, if you have tips, please submit them in the comments. Like, it's a learning community. Okay, we have another question from Shulamit, who is live. Hey, Shulamit. Shulamit says, hi, when you change nylon strings, they consistently go out of tune. Is there some tip to keep them in tune?
They do.
Fair question.
Yes, you are a real guitar player now. You know about that.
Fair question.
Yes, and I play nylon string a lot, and they easily go out to much easier than steel strings. They are sensitive to humidity and temperature, much more so than steel strings.
Right.
First of all, I'll tell you, I change strings often, and especially if I'm coming to a performance, I will not change strings and then go perform. I'll do it at least a day before and plan on tuning it up a dozen times before I actually go out and play on stage.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna stretch, there's no way out. I like to do it the day before so it sits all night. I also count on just having to tune more often. I have nylon and steel string sitting next together. I know I can pretty well pick up the steel string and it's gonna be pretty well in tune. I know if I pick up the nylon string, I'm going to tune it.
Yep.
I'm not going to expect it to be in tune.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And then I try and keep it in a place that's not fluctuating tremendously, temperature and humidity.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference. Leave it in the trunk of your car, I promise you, not only will it change, but it'll likely bust a string from the heat or the cold.
Right. I'd recommend stretching the strings too. I don't know if you mentioned that, but...
No, I didn't. But I do that particularly if I'll tune up a little high, because I know it's going to stretch down. A little bit, though. I don't want to bust the string.
Yeah, don't bust the string. And for those of you that don't know what that is, I'll show you on my uke. But be careful. But you put a few fingers underneath the string and your thumb on top. And you just apply pressure up and down the string. And that'll help stretch it. And actually, you'll see, as soon as I'm done doing that with all my strings, my uke is going to be out of tune. actually not that bad because I stretch and tune all the time. But when you put new strings on, it's really important.
It takes a while with
It does.
new strings.
It does.
To get to where they're stabilized.
Yeah. And nylon strings in general,
They're always going to need more
Yeah.
tuning than the steel string guitar.
Right.
I would just both take advantage of the tips and especially when you put new strings on, but just count on tuning more often too.
Yeah, same goes with the uke because there's the nylon strings too. Cool. All right, we have another live question from Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Paul says, suggestions for string muting when picking individual strings. Example, playing a scale and keeping other strings from ringing or making noise.
Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
When I first heard string muting, I was thinking of the technique of muting strings while you're playing chords. I often tell students, I've had this issue before, in the early stages, I wouldn't put too much energy there because you will work most of that out over time.
Yeah.
And what's happening is a lot of subtle things. When you're playing a note, I'll do a basic G scale. What I'm doing is often when I hit the string with my left hand, this finger is slightly angling to where I'm touching this string so it doesn't ring. But if you focus on that when you're first learning, you'll never get the basic scale. That's why I say it's not a critical thing. The other thing that I do sometimes when I'm playing melody is I'm actually using my right hand and I'll dampen the strings so they stop ringing. There is no point where I'm playing a melody where some other strings don't ring. That's going to happen.
Right.
So I've learned to kind of manage it with my right hand and mute. So let's say I'm doing this. Now this other string would normally ring if I left my finger there, but I'll mute it slightly. Oh, I muted both strings. I didn't mean to do that. And I also will angle my finger slightly on the left hand to mute out another string. It takes practice and it takes over time to there's no way to do it like in one session and just get it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say. It takes persistence.
Do you ever do like left hand muting then? Like releasing some of the pressure on with your left hand? So if you're like...
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes I just release the string.
Yeah. And not like take it off so you're getting like a pull off.
I understood what he's saying. He's hitting this string and it's letting another string ring. So releasing the string wouldn't actually solve that.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. You're hitting the string.
So when you're doing chords, and I'm not sure if this is also an issue, because you were talking about melodies or scales. When you're doing chords, I often do. So for example, let's say I'll play the G this way. I don't want this string to sound. I'll let my finger sort of angle slightly there and touch that other string so it doesn't sound. Now you can't tell, but I'm hitting all the strings, but this one's muted. That's a common thing with especially more fancy chords. You really have to learn how to kind of angle your fingers so that you don't hit all the strings, they don't all ring.
Yeah, that's a good question. The last question we have is a pre-submitted one from Phil. This is a good time, by the way, for those of you that are live with any final questions, submit them now.
Last call.
Last call. So Phil says, I'd like to know how to figure out instrumentals in the middle of songs. What I mean is the parts where the person is not singing. He gives an example of a Ryan Jacobs song. Says he plays an intro instrumental, and in 45 seconds he plays the instrument on the side of the song. I'd like to know how to figure out how to play things like this. Thank you, I love your channel, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. This is what he's talking about. So you'll have a song, and then this. So it's kind of a melody and chords playing together.
Yeah.
So it's no problem. You just do what I just did.
It's pretty simple. Yeah, just.
Well, first of all, that would be sort of the next step beyond just playing chords.
Right.
So first of all, you better make sure at least you have a handful of the basic chords pretty good before you start trying to do that. So what I'm doing is I'm making a choice about hitting melody notes in between the rhythm patterns as I hit the chords. I'm also using here a technique called hammer on and pull off. Probably the best way to get started with that is to learn some bass progression. So let's say you got your basic chords. You want to make sure you can, you don't have to be perfect, but you're reasonably comfortable with the basic chords and changing from one to the other. Right. If you're dealing with 5 different issues, fingering the chord, getting it to the next place on time, and trying to hit a melody note, you're probably just going to get overwhelmed and nothing's going to really happen.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to add some bass notes, that would be the next step. Bass notes would be bass runs between the chords. Because those are used very commonly, and that would be sort of an easy way to start playing a melody, so to speak, in the bass. What I call them bass runs, because they map the movement from one chord to another. Then you'll get used to hitting the single note and the chords together. And little by little, you can start trying some other notes in the chord.
Yeah.
So what I used to do to also get good at this, and this wasn't the first thing I went to, I could play basic chords, is I would get transcriptions of some simple little melody. Transcriptions are basically somebody wrote it out, and what I usually get is it has the notation and the tablature underneath.
Yeah.
And then I would try to copy them. And I would take one chord at a time and play melody. Keeping it sort of at the bare bones, and then start adding little nuances to it. Do a different chord, then try putting them together, and little over time I would make a whole little instrumental version.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think there's the other half to that question too that I was picking up on when Phil was basically saying like how to figure out the instrumentals. So a lot of that sounds like you have some ear training questions there about being able to hear something and play it back. Being able to play by ear is a skill within itself. I mean, you could start a whole YouTube channel learning how to play by ear. My recommendation, just because I'm on the ear side of things, is sing it. Sing it. If you hear something and you're playing it, see if you can sing that melody, and then you can.
So let me see if I got this right. I realize this might be something that I actually do, but I don't really think it out.
Yeah.
I'm playing a chord, and I want to hear da 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 da.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna find those notes. Da, 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 da. Okay. Now now I'm adding it in between the strums. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Ooh, I made a variation. Another variation. Okay, I can get into this. It's fun. So, yes, those are all sort of a little more advanced depending on where you're at.
Right.
If you're still just struggling getting the chord changing on time, I'd focus there first. And, shortly after that, I would try to find some tablature or some lessons that had the melody and the strumming together.
Yes.
On the simple side, start with just one chord. Don't try and do a whole big long instrumental, and you never get to the end and feel like you weren't able to do it.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a fun one. It's my favorite thing to teach. And the other thing is, the more you do it, the better you'll get. And a lot of that has to do with ear training. So I don't know if y'all were watching, but he played it, and then like the second or third time, I was able to play it with you.
Yeah.
And that just comes from me. I didn't know what notes he's playing. I don't know the guitar fretboard very well. I mean, I could figure it out, but all it came from was listening and me singing it in my head and finding la. There's my first note. I know that.
See, now after this, I'm gonna go home and come up with some more of those.
Yeah, and then send them to me, and I'm gonna try and figure them out. Ear training. It's a really fun thing.
Wow. For my next practice plan on Real Guitar Success, I'm going to include one of those.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple, yeah.
Good. We have one last question that was submitted, one of our last call questions, and this will probably be the last of the day. So this is Tomas. He has a funny comment I'd like
Not
to
this
share.
Tomas.
Not you, the other one. The first thing it says, I used to play by ear, but I kept hurting my lobes.
Oh, a musician joke.
Just so
A
tasteless.
musician joke.
Okay, but
Well, I'm glad somebody has a sense of humor.
The real question is, would you recommend jazz guitar for a beginner?
Ooh. I mean, if you really love jazz guitar and you want to play guitar, I'm sure you get tons of different opinions on this. So I'd say, I'm sure you'll get some people say, no, that's more advanced. You should start with the basics. And that makes sense. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's one way to go. I would, if you have a real passion for it, I tend to go towards your passion, but find a teacher or some lessons that could break it down to simple steps.
Yeah.
Don't jump into the more complex side of jazz, which is likely for most people to just get discouraged and quit.
Absolutely. I would say do not jump down the YouTube rabbit hole.
That's a tough one.
Oh, because it's theory heavy.
Yeah. And that you have no way of actually getting the right order for what you need. You definitely get the basics, even if it is jazz oriented, in a way that it's accessible and you can practice and make some, see some kind of step-by-step progress. In the beginning, I'm fine with stretching and trying different things, but get some foundation, some confidence when you do that, not be on the edge of, I can't do that. I must not be able to play jazz.
Yeah. And my other thing about it is, this is a common question people ask me all the time, like, well, what's harder? Is it too hard? If you like it, do it. Because the thing is that, well, to put it blatantly, it's all going to be hard. It's all hard in the beginning. Everything is hard when you learn something new. So if what's stopping you is the idea that it's going to be hard or challenging, everything you're going to learn is going to be hard or challenging. So just start with the one that you're most comfortable with, and it's definitely not a self-guided journey when you're first learning. Because I grew up learning jazz. Like that's what I'm most trained in terms of styles of music. And I'm telling you, you really have to, you just have to take your time with it and find somebody that kind of knows what they're talking about. Find a system, find a roadmap so that you know what steps to take. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there.
That said, I will say, if you're a brand new beginner, there really isn't a big distinction between what style and what the basics are.
Exactly.
There are basics that apply to pretty much every style, unless it's some different country style that uses different tunings or something.
Yeah.
But country, jazz, rock, they all use those basic building blocks of making music.
Exactly. They're all kind of, I agree completely. I think those are all the questions.
Good question. Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah. So now what we're going to do is the raffle.
Okay, let's raffle. Let's see. This is going to be for a $50 gift card from Amazon, and the people that are entered have completed the practice plan for the month of October? No, November.
This is our last of the year.
Oh my God, the last.
See you guys in 2020.
Okay.
The winner is Vaquita Boss.
Richard!
Okay.
Congratulations, Richard. You're in. Okay, we'll get that gift card out to you. And this month we have a whole new practice plan for December. So I'll keep working. Again, the real benefit, the real winner is just getting through the lessons and enjoying your guitar journey.
Absolutely. We will see you guys next year.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
See you again. The
Take
first Tuesday of January. That's it.
Yep.
12 noon. Bye for now.
Bye.